So I'm going to introduce you to today's. I mean, some weeks it's good, and some weeks it's really, really good. And obviously, I'm not going to tell you which weeks are only good. But uh, I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased to be able to introduce to you our guest today. And so, first one is Mr. Martin Phipps. Hello, Mr. Martin Phipps. Yay! There he is. That build-up might have just been a little bit elaborate. I mean,
I look like a total simpleton.
Have you practiced your Zoom stroke video conferencing kind of range of facial expressions? Yeah.
No. So yeah, you're gonna. It's first time.
Oh,
well, not first time.
Of course. Yeah. They're basically. I think the big one to master is how to look engaged while simultaneously checking your email and or what's on the Guardian website at the same time. So I've been working out for a while. And so we've got wonderful Martin Phipps, but also the legendary and wonderful Rachel Portman with us as well. Hello! It's been sort of, I think some composers that I certainly feel have been part of my film going life since I can remember, and your work has always been. It's genuinely. If I get a bit fanboy halfway through, then just sort of like I'm sorry if it's embarrassing, but so many of the films that you've been part of I've absolutely loved. And are you kind of because I noticed that you are on Twitter now, but that's a relatively recent thing. Are you sort of finding that you want to engage a bit more with kind of social media, or is it a sort of has it been forced on you by terrifying management?
Well, it's a sort of mixture. It's it's sort of like I've sort of decided to do it for I just thought, right, I'm going to go for it. Having always thought, no, I'm not going to. I just thought, yeah, no, I will, and this is a good time to do it. So I am. I've just literally, I'm enjoying it actually. It's good.
And do you find that it sort of has suggested a particular kind of mode of communication for you so far? Have you found your voice on Twitter yet?
I'm finding it. I would say I'm not sure I've found it yet. I mean, it goes against sort of who I am really to sort of like put myself out there. Same with Instagram. It's sort of kind of strange. So I'm sort of in the process of sort of finding out. But it's really nice to be able to connect with others as well and see. It's just a whole. I think I've spent my entire life thinking I've just got to be at my piano the whole time. And, I know that this can get out of hand and really, really big. But it's quite good to sort of like to sort of, I don't know, to reach out a bit more. It's good.
I think that's really interesting because Martin, you're not on Twitter, is that right? Or could I just not find you? Or
no,
you just
I'm not. Well,
you've blocked me.
Yeah,
maybe.
I have got an old handle. Is that something? Somewhere, but I haven't used it for years, so I know you wouldn't find anything.
And do you find yourself kind of communicating through social media at all, or similar to Rachel, it's just sort of is it the work does the talking kind of thing?
No, I do Facebook, and it's quite. I like it for work, but beyond that, I don't really do. No, I don't do much. And maybe there's nothing wrong with coming late to the party. I might try it.
I think it's kind of it's been one of the things that's been really interesting for me during this process has been actually sort of that there's been a natural selection because of asking people to ask questions of the composers that have very generously come on board, and so it's become a kind of de facto survey of what is uppermost in some people's minds at the moment, and a kind of anxiety for younger composers about how they present themselves on social media, because that is the immediate thing that's on their phone. It seems to be uppermost. I've had probably a couple of dozen questions over the last weeks about how to present yourself, and Martin, do you find that it's that kind of early marketing sort of sense of selling yourself, was that ever something that you had to actively choose to do, or did you just work and see what happened next?
I did. Yeah, no, I didn't really. It wasn't something I did that much of. I think you've got to be comfortable doing it, really. And if you're not particularly comfortable doing it, then it won't kind of ring true. And you just, I don't know, you may not get it. You just won't be able to keep going with it. And some people are just better at that. They like projecting themselves and putting themselves out there and being and communicating widely. And I'm probably just not quite like that. I'm just happy being away on my own. But I mean, when I was starting out, it wasn't there at all. The website was the most complicated thing I ever had to deal with, and I did set one up outside my agent, and that was fine and good and interesting and quite fun for a time. But I didn't really keep it going that much, and that's kind of what my agent's for. So, among many other things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Multifaceted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. I was doing the classic thing that everybody does, or in theory does before these sort of chats, and digs into the flimsy world of Wikipedia and IMDb, just to remind myself of both your early years and Rachel's, and mostly it was to discover the fact that I'm sure you told me once, but I've forgotten, and I was reminded of that. Was Benjamin Britten actually your godfather? Is that a true fact?
It is the true fact. It is the true fact, but I recently, as I got older, I found out looks like he had quite a few godsons. So the dawning realization of, I thought I was, quite special there, but no, he had quite a few.
I would take that. I'd say because
I'd take it whenever I can.
Exactly, because quite a few of the questions that we had about sort of early years, going over to Rachel, I think there's a fascination with because there's quite a lot of composers out there who have got a classical training and sort of feel that there's something film and something techie about film and TV which is not necessarily open to them if they come from a classical background. And you were straight music at Oxford, kind of classical.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very classical through and through. In fact, sort of very techie, and always been that way. So yeah, it hasn't ever been an issue for me at all.
Did you find that there are certain jobs or certain sort of obstacles that you felt that you were kind of pigeonholed and not asked to do the kind of big action films rather than the big sort of drama films because there was a perception around that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it was kind of a conscious choice for me that I was really interested in orchestral music and not electronica really. So I was very comfortable. I think everyone gets pigeonholed.
Yeah.
Every composer sort of gets sort of pigeonholed, and actually, even though it's sort of quite you kind of don't want it to happen. In other respects, it's sort of you end up doing probably what you're best at, except for and I feel I have quite a broad range, but I do tend to work on quite a lot of films with female protagonists.
Do you think that I mean, obviously as kind of the first female score Oscar winner, although there's sort of song, it all gets a bit murky.
Sure.
Do you think that was just part of the sort of narrative that surrounds you? We've ended up talking about the narratives that surround composers quite a lot of the last few weeks, because they're either sort of like explicitly constructed that people decide to create a narrative around them, or they just sort of build up around someone because you are yourself in the world and you do the work that you do, and the sort of stories sort of build up around you.
No, that. It used to. I mean, it's probably changing as well as as years go by. But it used to bug me that, you know, there was a narrative around me being, because there were just so few women composers out there. And, you know, it's just been something that's always, it's sort of in my real life, it doesn't mean anything at all. So, you know, I don't think of you know, occasionally a director or producer will think, yeah, you know, we want a feminine touch here. But, you know, I don't think anyone can tell whether a piece of music was written by a man or woman ever.
Is there an extraordinary concept that anyone thinks that they could? It's sort of like the sort of notes on a page are alarmingly ungendered. It's just sort of, you know, a B flat's a B flat's a B flat. Martin, I also another thing that I didn't know this morning was that you studied drama. Is that also a true fact?
That is also a true fact, and I was shit at it. And in the days where you didn't pay £9,000 a year for your tuition fees, and so I'm not sure I even read the syllabus properly. I didn't realise I was actually going to have to do any acting. I thought I was just going to be studying plays, and that sounded like a pretty easy course to be doing at college. So I did do that, but it was great for me in that, in order to get out of doing the acting, which it was crucifying me. It was awful. I started writing the music for the plays, and
is that right? Yeah, I didn't get that bit.
That was my total revelation moment. And so, although it's sort of wrong that I went to college without even thinking about probably what I was doing, it gave me the time just to find what it was, and it was. And that was my eureka moment. It was like, God, I was, at the time I was in bands and enjoying that, but I found working with 4 or 5 other people quite hard all the time. And something like, I could do this on my own, and I don't have to work with any other people. And and I've got a narrative, and I love that combination. And that was really exciting for me. So yeah, worked out well.
And so it was kind of presumably Manchester, wasn't it? Presumably there's a lot of other just sort of like small productions just being put on. You know, I kind of think, you know, so like one a week, there's always something being made, and then larger scale productions, and then the directors that were really sort of starting to take off. Did any of those directors go into film and TV later?
Not from drama. No, not from drama. Not from the plays. But it was just a moment for me to get to work out that being part of a narrative like that, and being part of the story, and the combination of the drama and the music together was like great. And then there's some of its parts, it was fantastic, and that was really exciting for me.
And then did you have a gear change when you came out of college? Did you know that there was film and telly to kind of like to try and get involved?
Yeah. I definitely realized straight away it wasn't plays I wanted to do. It was films, and started doing short films. Whoever, you know, just hanging around, whoever might be making a little short film or doing anything that looked like it would end up inside a camera, I would stick around with. And straight after college, I just went and got a job in a post-production place, and it was a runner on Smith and Jones, which was
I remember
Griffith Jones and Mel Smith. Not the finest comedy ever, but it was
I don't know.
Fun.
I like that.
Really like it. All right.
Yeah.
Good. I was Griffith Jones's driver for summer. Good times actually. It was really fun. He used to sit in the back of his car and read. He used to make me stop at newsagents and run out again with a huge great wad of magazines, and sit in the back of his car reading yachting magazines. And he was kind of like, sit in the back and read out the spec of these massive great yachts. He didn't have a boat or live anywhere near the sea at that time, or a river, but he just had these massive. He just read out these huge things and laughed to himself in the back. I don't think he was doing it for my sake, but his own amusement.
That is genuinely genius. It's already worth the price of admission for some Griffith Jones stories. Yeah. Rachel,
that's what I got.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Sorry, so we're at least quarter of an hour in. Rachel, were you back to the sort of transition from classical through to film and TV? There's some people that have a catalyst person, i.e. somebody that they meet that kind of flips it all for them, and some people have sort of situations where maybe they kind of went to NFTS or did something which provided an environment. Which was it for you, or something totally different?
It's interesting hearing you, Martin, because actually the same thing happened to me at university. I got really interested in writing music for theatre, and so I did lots and lots of student theatre. And then I found, as the scene changes got quicker, the music was sort of cut down. And I thought, and then there was a film made I was at Oxford, and I was a contemporary of Hugh Grant, and he was in this film actually. He wasn't the main part, but and I did the music for that, and then I thought that's what I really want to do. But the catalyst for me, God, what would the catalyst be? I mean, the person who gave me my break was two people. It was Alan Parker and David Portman. Between them, and they were good friends. And I knew nobody in the film industry, and I had no experiences. I had nowhere to train. So I learned it. I literally learned it by this one student film, and then I got a job through a conversation I had in a pub after a screening of Midnight Express with Alan Parker, who, literally it was as a series of that. I mean, I gave him a cassette afterwards. He was so friendly and nice. He's the only person I knew in the film industry. I gave him a cassette of this piece of music that I'd written that had been recorded by students, and he passed on to David Portman, who called me to his office and showed me a film that was about to go out on Channel 4 and said, look, it's going out in a couple of weeks. Would you have any thoughts about what you'd have done with the score separately? Because I'm not completely sure about music. And so, I mean, that was the catalyst for everything for me. It was amazing. Very, very lucky.
It's very interesting because I think the stories that we've heard over the weeks from lots of the composers is that there's a sort of there's a catalyst moment which becomes clear usually in hindsight, because at the time you kind of, we meet quite a few people and go, well, I certainly used to go to the pub quite a lot, and less at the moment, but and so consequently I worked with lots and lots of younger directors on lots of things, and the hit rate was really low. I mean, most of the stuff that I would have done early on just didn't, when you describe it 30 years later, nobody's going, oh yeah, no, I really love that. Most of it was sort of like Rotherham Arts Centre, and there was like 4 people watching this contemporary dance piece. But in hindsight, there was that sort of, I think everybody looking back has got their own Hugh Grant moment where, oh, and actually the bloke next to me in the bar turned out to be Hugh Grant. But I think then what maybe for some of the composers who were earlier on in their careers in the chat, because inevitably we all describe the 1 in 10 that worked out. Often it feels like every conversation they have, every short film should be the one that takes them up. And for me, certainly there was a numbers game for a very long time. But both of you, I think, were obviously wonderful and talented, and have done incredible work. It feels like, looking back, both of you started working quite a lot relatively early, but it probably didn't feel like that at the time, Martin. I don't know. Did it feel like it took a while to get going?
It's about, for me, it was about getting a break into drama and doing something to actually that was a proper drama and writing music to that. And I was lucky and did quite a lot of little documentaries and short films, but actually getting a properly funded drama took 10 years, which is, I guess, well, I mean, from the moment I left college, I was 30, and I had to marry a drama producer along the way.
That is excellent careers advice.
Yeah, beat that. That's,
if in doubt.
She was not a drama producer when we got together
at the time. The 10 years is fascinating, because I've said that to so many people, and usually had a slightly kind of either annoyed or disbelieving expression back. But it feels in sort of film and telly, in the film and telly world, that 10 years is our 10,000 hours. In that, for so many people, it takes 10 years. Obviously, you can measure it from where you like, but it takes a while before you get going.
Yeah, Yeah, for sure. I mean, but there's a huge amount of luck. There's, you know, it really is that one you're talking about, that one person you might have met and you strike up a relationship with, and it's about the personal chemistry you have with them, and whether that you then go on to do something and they get successful and they like you enough to take you with them. I mean, that's it was David and Daniel last week. Was it last week?
They were 2 weeks ago. Yes. I mean,
yeah, I saw that, and they were they both done massive films by their mid-30s. So
they were terrifying.
Like that.
Not happy with, not happy with either of them.
Yeah.
Rachel, we've had lots and lots of questions for both of you about process, and it's kind of I think people are intrigued in both your process and Martin's process. Yours, because I think there's a perception that you might. I wonder if it's that people think that because you start on the piano, it gives them permission to start on the piano too. I wonder if there's something quite freeing about the fact that you start on the piano, if indeed you do. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. So how do you begin the process?
Well, I do. I write at the piano. I mean, I'm happy. I can write away from the piano, but it's so quiet to write. You know, so sort of like away from the piano, and the piano is kind of my friend. So I literally sit at the piano with a piece of manuscript paper and wait for inspiration to come and write on the piano. And I see the piano I see the piano very much like a sort of sketching. If you were to do a drawing of something before you were to do a painting of it. So
I see, yeah.
In many ways, because the piano becomes like, it's not really a piano anymore. It's not. So, but I have to be careful that everything I write doesn't sound or have a piano in it. I'm afraid.
I have to wipe that off.
Exactly. But so it becomes like sort of like pencil, really. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my process.
A very good sense, and I think people would be interested about what happens next. Then, if do you have a regular programmer for your mock-ups, or does it go?
Yeah. I have a regular. I have a few programmers I work with. And so what I do is what happens next. I was also just wanted to say that whatever you want to write, whatever mode suits you in order to want to write, should be the one that you use. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. If you want to write on your guitar, if you want to write on your keyboard, if you want to write in your head, or if you want to write on the piano, but you should go with it. Yeah. But anyway, after that, I do in order for mock-ups, because I do a sort of like a short score orchestration. So I will basically map out the orchestration depending on time. Sometimes there's very, very little time. And of course, directors want to hear everything that you're going to be doing. And even though I would be able to tell from a piano recording what it would be. So I sort of mock it up as much as I possibly can. It never goes through anything except for piano with me. It's literally handwritten piano recording. And then I do a short score orchestration, which I then give to the programmer or orchestrator.
I think that's fascinating, because one of the conversations that we had in an earlier chat was about flexibility of tempo, and about the sort of the way that the music breathes and doesn't breathe these days. Martin, we've had actually a number of questions that were framed as compliments about the sonic characteristics of your scores. People saying, actually Jim Copperthwaite, there's a bunch of people I should be name checking, some good friends. Do you start sometimes with a sonic signature, or always musical, or depends on what the gig is? Yeah,
I'm totally different to Rachel. I don't think we probably start from really different points on this. My piano playing is appalling. I would never. I'd never play in front of anybody if I could possibly help it. Certainly not record something live for anybody. And I've got about a 3, maybe 4 chords, depending on a good or a bad day, repertoire, and so I'm really limited. I can't just sit at the piano and make something sound great and nice straight away and quickly. So I've got to kind of think differently about how I do it. And so finding the sound, finding the genre of music, or the sonic thing is a good idea, really. That's the idea. What's the sound of it, and what connects with the narrative or the characters or the drama in it? What's going to work there? I don't use templates at all.
I see.
I always start with a blank page, which is scary, but it makes me think about what I'm specifically choosing for this for the project I'm working on.
And would you try and give yourself a sort of research period then, even if it's only a few days? I mean,
I really hope so. Yeah. I mean, I'm getting more and more. The way I'm working at the moment, I'm taking longer and longer over jobs. I mean, it's sort of the luxury of where I am at. Yeah. But I have had to do, work really fast and do jobs in a few weeks and over the time. But I never enjoyed it. And I think the thinking time is really important. I love sitting around thinking, and stuff comes.
I think it's the best.
Those early hours of the morning. Those when you can't sleep, or you're waking up, or when you've had a few drinks or whatever overnight, and come to you, and and also just having some statistics. You hear something else, and you go, oh wow, yeah, that's a field, a direction we could go in with this, and that takes a while to sort of soak up. So it's really important.
I think the time thing. I mean, Rachel, you sort of. My impression is that you're predominantly working in a sort of film sort of format. In that, I don't know. Have you done much sort of multi-episodic TV, or does it tend to be sort of?
No, I haven't. No. I haven't.
And is it something where you have? Is it something that in a kind of Netflixy kind of world you'd be interested in taking a look at, or are you more interested in sort of creating single worlds? It's what I've always felt film to be.
It just sort of turned out that way. I nearly have. I've come very close to working on multi-episodic things. It's just the way it's kind of worked out, really. I mean, I'm interested in what Martin was just saying about, how you work your way into a project and that time. And also, Michael, what you just said about, you like that time. I always find that time like, God, the clock's ticking, they're waiting, okay, so when are we going to hear something? You've had the conversation where they're saying, this is what, and you say, this is what I think the music should be, but you haven't really thought about it. You've had that. And then you go away and you've got that thing, I've always described it as standing outside of film, or you stand outside and you've got the screen and you know what you're going to be doing, and you've got the film there, and you wait and you knock at that door again and again and again, and then at some point, when you've had your sleepless nights and you've stopped worrying about it, you've been for all the long walks, and you spend the hours in front of the piano, you enter you go through that door, and then it just all kind of happens. And it is the most important part. It's the most creative part, I think. But it's such a sort of peculiar and can be incredibly stressful if you haven't been given very much time.
I think that is fascinating. The kind of if you could draw a kind of like a anxiety curve that we would all suffer at various points, and I think it's different for different. We're sort of, I think we're all set up slightly differently. Every one of us sort of brings slightly different experiences to the table, and for me that there's a moment of and this is weirdly, this is the same for me with sort of classical pieces and sort of kind of recording artist stuff as it is for film. There's a moment when you walk out of the first spotting meeting, or when you've first seen the film, for me, when anything is possible. It's literally like the whole of the sky, any music could be, and that is, for me, that's a slightly sort of vertiginous feeling, like standing at the edge of a huge cliff or witnessing a huge sort of elements of nature, which is, I think for me, it's simultaneously deeply anxious, as you describe, Rachel, but also there's a sort of, there's a wonder in it and a possibility in it. And then the rest of the process for me is about it getting a bit sort of more dragged down to earth, where all the astonishing possibilities that could have been actually have to be written down, and they're never quite as good as they were when they were in my head in that first moment. God bless them. I've got. Oh, sorry, Martin. Go for it.
Right. As long as you keep that moment of real excitement, then I know when that. As long as I keep getting that moment of real excitement when I start a project, then I'm still in the right business.
Oh, do you know that's a super good point, because I don't think, I mean, certainly there's been points in the past where I've not been brave enough or sort of had enough money in the bank to go and watch something, have my heart sink and think this is awful. And there's been too many times when I've not walked away at that point and thought, no, it's a sort of northern work ethic. It's a job. Go and do your job, son. You know, crack on. And it is something to kind of to hold in mind. Would either of you, if you see something now, kind of what point would you turn something down if it came in and you didn't feel, if it didn't spark joy, as the book says?
I've only ever walked away from one thing, I think, for having seen it. From that, same as so kind of like you, Michael. It's you get your head around it and you get into it, and quite often I persuaded myself it's really pretty good by the time I've finished it, and it's like, yeah, this is really pretty good, and then you have the sad realization when you actually your first instinct was right there, but you know, it's kind of a beautiful thing that you get through that and you get into the job and you're in a process of creating it with a lot of other people and they're all into it, and so it works. But thankfully I haven't. And it's a brave thing to do, to say you'll do something and then look at it and then go, actually.
Oh, you are in very, very deep at that point. Rachel, have you turned things down that you can tell us about at that point?
I mean, I can't tell you what I did. You know,
in principle, anonymized.
Yeah, I mean, I've started. I mean, once or twice, so I just felt ill because it was just such a bad idea. I don't know. I just. But I mean, like both of you, I feel. You know, I have this really strong work ethic, and I think if I've told someone I'm going to do it, then I've got to do it. So then I need to persuade myself that, you know, that there are redeeming features, just like you said, about the whole. But I also think that's really important for us as writers. You know, I don't want to be doing anything unless I really believe in it. So I think to be able to say, okay, you know, there is interest in this. I can create something that is meaningful in this is really, really important.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You know, and I've always managed to be able to do that somehow. I've never been sitting there thinking, oh, I really don't care. That would be just awful. So I think the ability to actually, and it's really funny how once you start committing to something, you think, okay, it's actually fine. It's gonna. The minute you put some music against something that you think, well, the thing wasn't really working. You become so thrilled at the fact that you might have made it a little bit better.
Yes, exactly. It's slightly less shit than it was. That is brilliant. I've got some interesting questions this week that we haven't had. I'm gonna fire them at you both in no particular order because some of them I haven't thought about myself. I've got a question from Charlie Brigden, who is a very fine writer himself, critic on film and TV music and lots of other kinds of music. And he asked a question, obviously sort of framed from his world, where he says, in today's world where instant digital is the primary method of delivery for music, I'll just change that, where do you see music critics, specifically film music critics, fitting in? Are you aware of the critical reaction either to the show or to the music or to the film? Do you read your reviews? Do you care? Do you care and try and hide away, or just any variation? Martin, how do you feel when a show goes on telly?
I think music doesn't usually get picked out in TV that often. And when it does, it probably means that it's
not for good reasons.
So it's probably best. No news is good news usually. But that's not always the case. And so when it is singled out in a positive way, that's absolutely lovely. Really, it's so nice that people notice that. It's definitely harder to punch through on the small screen. then it's
how do you feel about soundtrack albums for other film and TV yourself? Do you like them as a form, or
well, getting your music out on yeah, definitely for a soundtrack. Yeah. I mean, I hope that what I do is listenable to in its own right. So I would always, even if fairly heavily edited, but I always try and write something that I would be happy to listen to on its own.
I see.
And that's quite a good test for when I'm trying to write something to pitch it. If I'm really thinking, look, I'm just not going to want to listen to this, I wouldn't sit down and listen to this. Then something's wrong for me.
And is that, if you've reduced whatever's happening to something so sort of practical and not musical, it's just like, I should rethink the scene maybe.
Well, yeah, and often that's not your fault. I mean, often it's you're pushed that way by the directors and whatever forces there are at work, and I understand why that happens sometimes, but it's a shame. And that might be an instance where I'm thinking, am I really the right person to be doing this? If you don't really want to hear music, you want to hear something different. You want sound design, and I've got a huge amount of respect for sound design. I think it's really important and really valuable and really modern, and has a massive contribution in modern day filmmaking. But it's not what I do, and I wouldn't sit and listen to it. So,
so
very niche.
The 100 best sound design classics. I've got that Spotify playlist. I listen to that all the time. Rachel, a lot of your wonderful scores have had long lives as soundtrack albums afterwards. I have to say, I don't know whether I'm the odd one out with the three of us, although obviously there's quite a few soundtrack albums out there that from projects that I've done, but I really struggle with soundtrack albums. I kind of make albums under my own name that I think work as albums, hopefully, or the best they can. I struggle with soundtrack albums because I know what was happening at the same time, and I know that I wouldn't have written that piece of music that way if it was just for an album.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether I'm just miserable. How do you feel about it?
You struggle with them in general, or your own ones?
I struggle most with my ones, but I also struggle conceptually, I think, with I can kind of see what a soundtrack album is. I can sort of imagine it as an artistic artifact, but also it's sort of, I don't quite know what it is. It's like half the film. Is it an opportunity just to listen to the music on its own? I don't know.
I don't know. I think so. I think it really, really depends on the score, and it really, really depends on the project.
Right.
And if you're able to write a very melodic score, with different themes and different characters, and that's drama's really good for it. And I've done so many dramas, film dramas. I think that makes them easier as soundtrack albums. But I know what you mean about being sort of like, what is this? I don't know. It's I don't tend to listen to soundtracks. I tend to my listening is, I'm sure like you, I don't know, I'd be really interested to know with both of you actually, if what you listen to when you're not writing, because I find that I'm all musiced out at the end of the working day, and so often I just want silence.
Oh,
silence.
Totally.
Yeah.
or podcasts. God bless podcasts for me. So when I walk to the studio from home, which takes about 25 minutes, that is like a perfect little lump of podcast for me. But no, there's no way I can listen to any music and then sit in a chair for 12 hours and make some more. And so that question that people then ask, which is sort of like, what are your sort of desert island disc music questions? What are your 10 favorite records? For me, they're always sort of like from a long time ago. I sound like a massive dinosaur because it's all the stuff that I used to listen to when I was a student, or those records, like, I absolutely wore out. But it's hard these days to find a kind of a place. I often think, for me, it's like a sort of food and palate metaphor, and this it feels like we're tasting so much rich food all day, musically speaking, that I kind of want like a really cool sort of white burgundy. That's actually what I'd really like, but it's sort of like a sort of a pure taste down the middle. And a sort of so I'm properly like Bach cello suites, not, you know, all the old kind of classics for something that has got that kind of single focus. If I put something on, or lots of Miles Davis, Bill Evans era jazz as well. But Martin, for you, is listening to anything else? Is it sort of literally Radio 4 or turn that noise off? I
totally get what Rach was saying about struggling to hear. You know, you just want silence in your head by the end. But it's still really important, I think, to keep listening to stuff. Just going back to the soundtracks, it feels like the best soundtracks are the stuff that really reminds you of, you've seen a good film, you've loved the film, and then the music makes sense. And you then go away and you listen to that soundtrack and it brings back the film. I think the most successful soundtracks are the ones you listen to, and you are partly reliving the film as you're listening to it, and that's a real joy.
See, I think that's really interesting, because that is it took me ages to stop being grumpy about it, and that is the line in that seems most meaningful to me now as well. It's sort of a kind of like a revisitation, but like actually, so perhaps I'm changing my mind as we talk, but it's a really it can be a really powerful recreation of the feeling that you felt without it. Yeah.
I've been watching Devs on.
Oh yeah, I'm saving that up. Looks amazing.
Great score on that. Great, really good. Ben Salisbury, and I don't know if Jeff Barrow was on it too, but the Insects. I don't know how it worked out, but instantly the music meant just. I tried to find it and was desperate to find it, because I just wanted to relive that experience. I really enjoyed the series and wanted to go back and hear it again and have a sort of part sort of replaying in my own head while listening to the music.
That's super interesting. Yeah, totally. We've got some questions about collaboration, and they sort of split off into two veins. One on there's sort of question for Martin in terms of some of the amazing multi-episodic stuff, but kind of going into The Crown and being part of something that existed before, and you know, and how you dealt with that. But also with Rachel, for you, perhaps it's more. There's a few people asking about whether your relationship with directors and the way that you collaborate with them, whether that has changed over the years because of the expectation of the work that you've done, or whether it's kind of stayed the same. Martin, on The Crown, was it? You know, I mean, it's a big show, done incredibly well. But you know, you and I have both been around the cutting rooms of Soho's when big shows have started, and been in the middle and gone on to a bunch of seasons. Was that a challenge to come in a little later? I mean, most of the time now you originate season one.
Yeah. I've never done that before, but then again, it's The Crown, and I loved it so much.
Totally.
I was really, it was tricky because also I didn't really understand why they were changing the music. I had a lot of love for the music of the first two seasons. I thought it was really good. I mean, Hans obviously did a little burst on it to start off with. I don't know, it was mainly Rupert Gregson-Williams and Dawn Balfe, and they did a fantastic job. So it was really interesting process, and it was very, that vertiginous feeling you're talking about was particularly strong and acute in that instance. But luckily the producers behind it really wanted a change of direction, and it was, they thought about it, and what was really nice is they listened to my music and they thought that was right for it. So it was, and that's the nicest thing in any collaboration, is that they actually have really engaged with what you do, and I like and want to try, and they want that sound, not you trying to guess what sound they want. So I had to just stick to what I like doing.
Did they, nosy question, did they temp it with your stuff from other shows or earlier Crown, or a mixture?
They were pretty good and tried not to tempt it with earlier Crown, because that would have been really easy and it would have fitted fantastically, and I would have been fucked.
Exactly.
You know, it would have been really hard to compete with that finished polished product that had already written for a show that was working really well and really good. But no, luckily they were very much engaged in the process of trying something different. And also, so what I did, and you were talking about how the process starts and how much time I gave it. I mean, I'm spending best part of a year on each season. I'm on season 4 now, and I'm spending the best part of a year on 10 episodes, which is obviously, I mean, some might say lazy, but
yeah, got some work to mind.
It gives me the time to basically, I start when they start filming, and I write a whole load of stuff while they're filming, not to picture, and just a very general briefs about characters or ideas, and I write what I like writing with those ideas in mind, and then I give it to the editors and they cut to it. And it's a completely different process than I've worked on before, and the editor literally cut to these tracks I give them, and then I spend quite a long time rejigging these tracks and reworking them, and often going back to the original basic demos I did, you know, having done big symphonic records, and we end up often
there's something about those first demos.
But it's so nice to have the editors working with it, and they do great things with bits of it, and that's just the nicest collaboration and symbiosis, you know, you get if that happens, you know. And I get presented with an episode which is temped up with all my music and is working really well, and it's like, thank you very much. That's great.
That's a good day. Rachel, do you find yourself facing films that have got your old stone cold classics temped in, or do you try and get to them first and say, don't put Emma and Chocolat in this, thank you very much?
Exactly. You know, I mean, it is. I think it is sort of. It's always quite disconcerting to have other temp music on there that isn't yours.
Yeah.
You know, which often does happen. It just happens. You know, depending on what music editors you know end up putting in. It's rare that I get in there and, you know, early.
I see.
To be honest, I've done it. And, you know, there's often a desire for the composer to come in really early, but in practicality, it often doesn't work out, and a lot of the music gets chucked because, you know, characters. Oh, we don't have that character anymore. They end up on the cutting room floor or stuff. Yeah. So it's a funny thing. The whole thing of temp music. It's really. It plays with your head when if it's, I don't know, you know, I mean, I often, you know, will sit down and coming in on a film and there's temp music in there. I don't want to listen to the temp, but then I think, oh, well, then I will. And then I always think, God, you know, I could never do that. I'll never be able to do anything as good as that. But that's my nerves and stuff. Yeah. And then, of course, once you do write the music that actually fits with the film, you think, oh God, of course, you know, that other music doesn't work at all. And it's my own head playing sort of tricks that of sort of beginning of a project nerves, I guess. It's just sort of kind of normal. I don't know if you guys have that, but it's strange.
I mean, I've found that there's a kind of to and fro between comfort and kind of getting an easy win, and then that good stretch of feeling discomfort for quite a long period of time, and out of the discomfort something good comes. I mean, I know when we're doing the sort of later series of Sherlock, inevitably there would be cues from earlier seasons sort of temped in there, but almost always they were in the wrong place, and it was such the wrong, not pretty much the wrong character's theme at the right place, but they gave that sort of quick fix, that kind of fast food elation, particularly to the cutting room, where it was kind of like, oh, we get to play the big tune here, and it feels, I think, in the cutting room that scene works for everybody it needs to, and sometimes if you're going fast, you kind of go, oh great, well that one's covered, let's keep going. But then when you really sit and think about it and are honest with yourself, and I'm fascinated to hear both of you talk about the sort of the kind of gut feelings, the sort of instincts, and whether it's expressed as sort of as nerves or excitement or anticipation or whatever words you use. In that, I mean, I feel that the more aged and venerable I get, the more that the value of that first gut instinct really is. And like Martin was saying about when you watch something for the first time, it's kind of like store that feeling because it's really, really important. And and if you watch, for me, if I watch something and there's a kind of little moment in the back of my mind saying, it's not working. I know everybody says it's fine, but it's really not. You know, you're gonna, that those are the cues that come back and haunt you later on, because if you didn't address that nagging feeling, then usually it will come back and bite you. Martin, do you think, are you an instinctive person, do you think, or sort of more cerebral?
What you're saying is so true. If you can try and hang on to those initial ideas, that's really important. But it's about who the people you're working with, and you are part of a process, and often they're finding their way with what the film is or the series is, and it's really about trying to travel on that journey with them and not get too knocked back when they knock your stuff back just because they're not ready to find out what it is yet. So it's a way of saying it, but it's so you can have an early instinct, but they might not even be ready for it yet.
That's a really good point.
It's like they've, especially if you're, because talking about starting early, the only reason Rachel, I could start early on this kind of stuff was because they already know what this season is, even this series is, and what their films are. And if it's even though they've changed cast and they've changed feel, Peter Morgan, the main guy, he knows what it is already, and he could listen to stuff of mine straight away, early doors, and he'd go, yeah, that's right, or that's not, and he'd always be right. And so working with someone with that confidence is really inspiring, and even though you're not totally in charge at all, really, in fact, but you're going along with someone with a real vision, and that's really great. So yeah, hang on to those first thoughts. Yeah, store them up for later, maybe.
Exactly. Rachel, are you head over heart, heart over head for you? You instinctive or intellectual, would you say?
Oh God, instinctive. I mean, I do everything is on intuition. Everything. So it's just gut feeling all the time. And I find it. I don't even know what I'm writing. I don't know what key I'm in. I often tell afterwards I don't know what chord progressions I'm doing or anything. None of it's theory or theoretical in any way. And it's interesting what you both been saying, but you, Martin, just then about if you get to work with somebody like, I don't know. I mean, I work with so many people, but there are some people who just give you when they know what they want, they know the film they're making, they're really good at what they do, and it's such a joy when you don't, when you have a sort of a director or you sort of in the driving seat who has confidence with how to work with a composer. When it's really not so comfortable, as you know, is when decisions are being made by a sort of team of people, and you're getting notes from all sorts, from producers and different conflicting ones from directors, a director and then producers. And
democracy is always good.
Sort of kind of in the middle. It's like, and then you need to hold on to. Then you need to hold on to very tightly to what you love doing, because it becomes quite hard sometimes. And not every project is going to work out in a way that is a dream project, but you'll get quite a lot of them along the way. But and relish them when they happen, because they're amazing.
So it's wonderful. I've got where the time has gone ridiculously quickly, and I certainly could. I would happily do this for the rest of the afternoon. I'd break open a bottle of wine for everybody. We could just sit. It's going to be lovely. But I've got one quick question that came in, which you both are uniquely qualified to answer, which is sort of slightly quick fire-ish one about awards. So Rachel, 1 Oscar win, 2 more nominations. Martin, I believe 2 BAFTA wins, 3 more nominations, 5 Emmy nominations, and things as long as your arm. Did it make a difference? Yeah. Did it land as an experience? What was your experience sort of winning and being nominated?
Well, I mean, it was like being on the crest of a great big wave. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. And yes, it made a big difference to me. It opened huge amounts of doors, and suddenly I became extremely trusted, as a composer. God knows why. I was the same person I was.
That's right.
Same.
Yeah.
But so it was sort of like a stamp of approval, and so no, it was amazing. It was amazing, and I told myself at the time, I was quite young, and I told myself, well, it's doesn't mean anything. But looking back on it, it was really nice, and I got very lucky. It's a real lottery with you, with all these things. I think
Gotcha.
sometimes it just is, and so I mean, it was great, and it has made a difference.
Martin, how it's sort of does it wear off after a while? It's like, oh, just another nomination.
No, definitely not. And they're all shit until you win one. When you win it, they're really well judged and really right on the money. And when you lose, it's like, obviously this is just random.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they do, mate. And what Rachel's saying, it's more about they give other people confidence in you, and that's really nice.
I think that's it.
Otherwise, yeah.
that is wonderful. And actually, I think that trust thing we've talked about trust several times. In whether it's in your personal sort of relationships with your team and with everybody, the players, it seems to be the kind of the glue that binds everyone together, whether it's you and the production or sort of or everybody that's around you, and some external validation that does make people sort of give people confidence in you if they needed to have it. I think it's super valuable.
Also, with such a solitary job, it is so, you're so on your own, and obviously, I mean, even to the extent that I haven't really even noticed that much difference in my working process in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, there's a pandemic out there, Martin. Don't go out.
Yeah, really? Okay, yeah, just outside my window, but that's so that some kind of little certificate from somewhere else from outside is nice. Yeah, sure,
totally. This has been easily one of my favorite chats. Has not disappointed in any possible way. I'm going to start wrapping up now. There's a few things that I just want to remind everybody about. One is the Discord group. I'm going to put that on before I forget. Come and join over here. The plan is that we're going to carry on doing coffee breaks until we all can go back to work properly. That might be optimistic. Might run out of chat before then. So thank you very much to everybody for coming. I'm going to just go around and get a physical wave, if possible, from Rachel. First of all, thank you so much for your time. Deeply appreciated. Thank you. And from Martin, if you feel the need to.
I just noticed there were quite a lot of questions down there which we didn't get a chance to answer, so I'm really sorry about that.
Oh yeah, no, very very good point actually. The chat transcript does. I think I got carried away because I was enjoying the chat too much. The chat transcript does go online, and also there is the Facebook group. If anybody wants to address any questions, or if anybody feels like passing some more questions through me, then I will very happily pass.
Sure, I'll have to try and answer anything else.
Brilliant. And so on that chat bombshell, we'll minute past the hour. Thanks so much to everybody for coming along again. There's been best part of 300 of you at some points, which is amazing. And so I will see you this time next week for more. Stay safe and stay well. Look after yourselves and your families. Thanks from all of us. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.